Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Good evening. I'm Bob Hebert, Fort Bend County Judge, and I'm here to give you an update on this continuing disaster that grows as every minute passes in Fort Bend County. The Brazos River and the San Bernard River are both in major flood stage through the county. The San Bernard is within 1 foot of a new record height and is expected to go to approximately 4.5 feet over the record height. The Brazos River just passed 50 feet and officially became a major flood. The record on the Brazos at Richmond is 54.6. The Weather Service is still confident that we're going to come near to 59 feet. If we do that, we'll be 4.4 feet above the flood level of Memorial Day 2016 when the current record was set. This is going to inundate. People need to understand that the flood of Memorial Day 26 inundated 115 square miles of Fort Bend County. Now, I haven't run the calculations yet, but I can tell you when you put 4 feet or so on top of that, we're going to inundate a significantly greater amount of property. We're not going through this alone, and I want to mention the outside agencies from Texas, Arizona, Louisiana, Florida, and the federal government have brought assets ranging from airboats to high water rescue vehicles to drones to helicopters. They're staging at several locations and they're doing wonderful work. We deeply appreciate the assistance. We deeply appreciate the assistance to date that we've received from our governor, both of our senators, our state representatives, and our state senators. They're all engaging in Fort Bend County, and we do appreciate that. What have we accomplished to date? Well, we've had a serious ongoing flood because of the heavy rainfall in Fort Bend County. We have collectively done over 4,400 rescues and evacuations to date. Thanks to the bravery and professionalism of our first responders, we currently have 0 fatalities as a result of flooding. Even with all those rescues, we continue to receive calls for evacuations, and that work goes on as I speak. If you are trapped in your home and it is an emergency, dial 911. We asked you to call the Emergency Operations Center if you require evacuation assistance, but it is not a life-threatening situation. 911 in Fort Bend County is becoming overloaded with significant waits to get to an operator so we can dispatch the appropriate response. We need to cut back on that. So if you have an emergency and it's not life-threatening, please call us. Even with all the help that we have here, the need is great, and it can take some time for rescuers to find you and get you to safety. Mandatory evacuations are not issued lightly, and in each area where one has been ordered, the danger is great. So please, seek shelter at higher ground. The floodwaters have now risen to a height where many roads across all the county, over 100 of them, are closed. And now I can say the Stavanoa Bridge on 99 was closed approximately 8:10 this evening. The Grand Parkway is out of service to folks traveling north and south through Fort Bend County for the duration and perhaps longer, as we do not know how much additional damage this massive flood will do to the already damaged bridge structure that was under repair. We have several shelters available. Folks that are leaving, they have capacity. You're welcome to go. Make use of their services. I want to thank the American Red Cross. They've been wonderful in setting up shelters each time we've requested it. We have B.F. Terry High School in Rosenberg. We have Cinco Ranch High School in Katy. We have Cinco Ranch Junior High School in Katy. We have Eagle Heights Church in Richmond. We have Gallery Furniture, which is full, probably overflowing, but we really thank those folks for the kind gesture. We have Thurgood Marshall High School in Missouri City. We have Beyond Walls Outreach Center in Houston. We have the Christ United Methodist Church in Sugar Land. We have the City of Arcola Community Center in Arcola. We have the Creekside Christian Fellowship in Needville. We have the George Junior High School in Rosenberg. We have the Morton Ranch High School in Katy. We have the Sugar Land First United Methodist in Sugar Land. We have the Kempner High School in Sugar Land. And by tomorrow morning, we will open 2 additional shelters, one at Stafford High School in Stafford, Texas, and the other at the Sugar Grove Church of Christ on West Airport and Meadows Place. These shelters can handle several thousand people. So if you don't have a place to go, go there, but get to high ground before this water gets too high. I have originally ordered 10 mandatory evacuations and 10 voluntary evacuations in our lids. Most of our attention, since we had very short notice, was on our levee districts and the municipal utility districts in the county that operate levees under special legislation. The 10 mandatory evacuations that I originally ordered have now grown to 14. We have added Sienna Plantation Levee District. We have added the Pecan Grove Municipal Utility District to the mandatory evacuation list. We have added Fort Bend County Levee Improvement District number 15 and Fort Bend County Levee Improvement District number 19 to the mandatory list. Please, if you live in one of these levee districts, move. You are living and sitting on low ground. You are protected by that levee structure. Why are we issuing mandatory evacuation orders for so many of our levees? Because they are designed to protect against the 100-year flood. The flood that has a 1% chance of occurring in any year. That is the federal standard for levee protection. Harvey, if he reaches the 59 feet in Fort Bend County, will constitute at least an 800-year flood. Let me say that again, an 800-year flood. He will far exceed the design criteria for these levee districts. Now, we have over the years added special criteria to enhance the performance of our levee districts, and several of them are capable, and they have voluntary evacuations ordered because they're capable of withstanding even this 800-year flood in the opinion of their engineer and operator and the board of directors. But we have voluntary evacuations ordered because the folks living there will be isolated for at least, according to the Weather Service, at least 5 days before the water begins to recede. I don't think many folks really want to sustain themselves in an island surrounded by water with no access to the things that they need, like grocery stores and the doctor's office and the dentist, for an extended period of time. But since some people will choose to do that, the evacuation is voluntary because the people who run that levee district don't feel you're at risk. The mandatory evacuations, for a number of different technical reasons, the engineers and operators and the directors of those districts feel there is a risk of some failure of a portion of the levee, either through overtopping or through circuitous routes that go around the higher points in the levee and gain entry into the subdivision. Why are we so concerned about it? Because a levee creates a bowl. And if the levee loses its ability to keep the outside water out, the river will fill the bowl to the level of the river. That's a very dangerous situation, as we found out in New Orleans under Katrina. So heed this warning if you have a mandatory evacuation and move on to higher ground. We have other subdivisions in the county that are not in levee districts. They're not subject to total inundation. They can become, there can be dangers associated with general flooding, and some of these can get water in the homes. But we can't determine the level of that risk because they're individual custom-built homes, typically with a variety of different slab elevations. And many times the builder takes into consideration a significant safety factor in building these country estates. So I have a list, and we provide that to each of you. And I want to point, and I'm not going to use this thing, I'm just going to point behind me to, this is an inundation map. It's an inundation map at 58 feet. 58 feet is the 500-year flood elevation in Fort Bend County, 58 feet at Richmond, Texas. We've run inundation maps in the past based on our new river models at 56, which is the 100-year flood elevation, and 58 for planning purposes. Probably should have thought of running it at 59 feet, but we didn't give it an idea, but this is relatively accurate. If you live in one of these subdivisions, and there are far too many for me to name right now without putting everybody to sleep, and the few that survive will be very confused. I will tell you that if you live in the unincorporated county in a subdivision, you can go to Fort Bend County TX.gov, G-O-V. Our website will come up, go to departments, click Drainage District, and when the Drainage District comes up, click Inundation Map, and you will get a representation of a portion of this map. You can enter your address. You can enter your address, and it will go to your subdivision, and your property will be roughly in the center of the screen. Identify your property. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you can click 56, and you will get the model for your subdivision at a river level of 56 at the Richmond gauge. If your lot has a color on it, if it's not white and looking pretty, then you're going to get water on your property. Then you click to 58, and if that color grows and covers more of your property, you need to realize that at 59 feet, you'll even have more water. We don't know how it will affect you because we don't know your slab elevation. And we can't do those calculations for the literally thousands of homes we have in these subdivisions. But if you have significant water covering your property at 56 and even more at 58, you need to consider whether to stay or to leave and make serious consideration. If you know your slab elevation and you know how much clearance you have above it, you can probably do a rule of thumb. And if you have any mathematical skill or engineering experience, determine if you have a significant risk. But one thing to understand, you're not going to have an inundation of your lot. You're going to have water rising from the ground up, and it will rise to some level. We know that might be as much as 4 feet in some of these subdivisions. But in the same subdivision where someone has 4 foot of water, there will probably be a couple of houses that have none, because they were built on a little bit higher ground, and the builder took extra care to avoid a risk of flooding. So it's an individual decision. This is offered to everyone out there so that they can check their property out against the 58-foot flood and then make a decision whether it's worth their while to stay on the property or seek shelter. If you seek shelter, I want to tell you, do not attempt to leave tonight unless you're going to a local shelter. There are only a couple of routes that will get you to Interstate 10, and you have to go northwest or north from Interstate 10. Along both those routes, you have to cross the San Bernard, which is going to record flood, and you have to cross the Colorado, which is in major flood. We cannot guarantee that at some point in the road you will cross one of those rivers and you will have water across the pavement. It could be very dangerous to travel across rivers in flood at night. So if you want to leave tonight, go to a local shelter. They will sure take care of you with great care. And then you can move on tomorrow if the roads are open. We publish on our website at fbcoem.org, which is our emergency management website, a continually updated list of routes that will get you out to Interstate 10 so you can move on. 99 is now closed. By tomorrow morning, FM 723 will be closed. FM 359 will be closed. 36 is closed because the underpass will be underwater very shortly if it's not already underwater. So we have very few routes north towards I-10 available to us now. So use extreme caution. Plan your trip if you decide to leave and go to grandma's house or to that college buddy's house to wait it out. If you choose to do that, make sure you know that your route is free of water to Interstate 10. If you get to Interstate 10 west of, in western Fort Bend County or west of Fort Bend County, you can move unimpeded away from all this rain and find a lot of dry highways that will take you anywhere you want to go. It's a longer route, it'll take more time, but it's safer. So act intelligently. Okay, I've covered the points that I feel I need to make at this point in time. Again, I ask you to realize that we're in a major flood. We're going to a record flood. And at our latest weather briefing, it was actually stated that they can guarantee we'll have a record flood in Fort Bend County. It may not go all the way to 59, but that's their forecast. But it will be a record flood, which means it will exceed 54.6 feet to Richmond Gauge. And that was a bad flood. This will be worse. How much worse, we don't know. Please think and make your decisions in the interest of safety. If you make a mistake, make a mistake by making a decision that leans too far in favor of safety. We can replace the property that's destroyed in this flood. We cannot replace lives. So take care of yourself and those you love. God bless you. Thank you.
So you're going to take questions?
Oh yeah, I'll take questions.
Have you had
As long as they're simple. I'm real tired.
do what I can. Have you heard of any levee breaches
No.
anywhere across Fort Bend?
No, we had a problem. Pecan Grove triggered at their request a mandatory annexation because they had a problem with a new pipe at a construction site that had a valve failure, I understand, and they were getting water back out of the creek that had flooded the detention pond they were building. And they couldn't shut it off, and they feared that with the creek already in flood that there was a risk that they couldn't get it fixed. It was 8 feet underwater. So they asked us to initiate a mandatory evacuation in the interest of safety. But they were able to bring in some plates, some backing, some heavy backing, and a dive team that went down, assisted by a heavy crane, and they got that thing closed off and sealed. But the mandatory evacuation is there. I'm not going to rescind it. It's just too close, okay? But other than that incident where they had a construction site problem, I know of no water coming through the levee.
What about water currently going over levees?
None.
None yet?
None. No. And if our calculations are right, we'll have a foot of freeboard left, even at 59 feet on our levees, on the levee structure that fronts the water. There's a technicality under federal law, though, and several of our older levees, and maybe some of our newer ones, I guess the law still exists, are tie into natural ground at or slightly above the 100-year flood elevation. Well, the problem with an 800-year flood is your levee may protect you to 800 years, but once it finds that land at 100, it comes right around your levee and floods you from the backside. So it's a significant risk. Those are getting mandatory evacuations, and it's nothing to fool with.
Judge, you mentioned the consideration that goes into calling for a mandatory evacuation. Do you anticipate, considering the forecast, having to increase that number from 14 to perhaps 15 or higher?
Oh, absolutely. If I come into a meeting and they tell me it'll go to 60, it'll all be mandatory. That would put the level of the river by forecast, in a short-term forecast, it would be level with the top of our levees. We couldn't assume that risk. If they miss it by 3 inches, or an inch, we overtop the levee and we have serious problems. I'm not aware of that. They've indicated that right now they're not sure it'll even reach 59, but they know it'll be a record. So they think they're in the range, and they've erred on again, in the interest of caution, they've gone to the highest feasible number for their forecast, so everybody knew. I'm hoping that it comes in at We can set a record at 55. I'd take 55 right now, call it even.
To what do you attribute these levels? Obviously, there's a massive amount of rain. However, is there anything that is being done upstream, in your opinion, that's contributed to this?
In my opinion, no. What we have here is probably an 800-year rain event that's causing an 800-year flood. We've got tremendous rain. We've got a hurricane downgraded to a tropical storm that just sits and keeps Fort Bend and Harris County in the northeastern quadrant, which is always the dirty quadrant of a tropical system. We're dumping rain, but as it weakened and broadened, those rain bands went up into the College Station, Bryan, Navasota, Giddings area. Guess what? That's the unprotected upper watershed. There's no flood control reservoirs below Waco. So all that rain falling in that area has to come through Fort Bend County. So we're now taking the water that fell of the 27, 28 inches we've got to date, maybe even more. I haven't seen the latest report, and we're adding that on top of it in a day or two, and it will continue for several days. But they believe, I think in their forecast, that the timing of it is such that we'll get to our height, and then we'll just stay there at least through Friday, maybe Saturday, and maybe into Sunday before we start back down again. It won't go higher, but it won't drop, and that can be a problem in and of itself. Okay? Any other questions? Okay. God bless all of you. Thank you.